A warm greeting between President Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping at the G20 summit in Russia. But a frosty response to President Obama's call for military strikes against Assad. After more than 2 years of brutal chaos and death in Syria's civil war, the US president says suspected chemical attacks crossed a red line. From the beginning of the crisis, China's followed a bottom line of non-interference.
If you have too much outside interference in the internal affair of any particular country, it will backfire. It most likely result in disaster for the people involved.
The policy of non-interference is decades old, but Chinese experts feel Beijing was burnt, in particular by their experience in Libya.
China has always emphasized
Beijing allowed a resolution on a NATO-led no-fly zone at the Security Council by not using their veto power, then watched how NATO became the de facto air force of the rebellion, crucial in ousting Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi, something they never wanted.
I think the Chinese position ever since then, as far as Syria is concerned, is sticking to the gun about non-interference in each other's internal affairs.
China and Russia have consistently vetoed any sanctions resolutions against the Syrian government. Unlike Russia, China has few military ties to Syria, but it does have monetary ones.
Beijing does have economic interests at stake in Syria, and it's afraid that large-scale intervention by the US might be detrimental to Beijing's long-standing economic interests in Syria.
Chief among those interests, oil. Of course, China will soon be the world's largest importer of crude, mostly coming from the Middle East. So any wider conflict sparked by Syria would be devastating to China's economy.
But to the world's second largest economy, China's trade with Syria itself is relatively inconsequential. So much of their support for Assad could be symbolic. If Xi Jinping backed a strike against Assad by the US or anyone else, it would send the wrong message inside China for a party obsessed with maintaining power.
Beijing has been supporting autocratic military juntas or otherwise one-party dictatorships in Africa and in the Middle East. So it's likely that it has some sympathy with similar autocratic authoritarian regimes around the world.
For China's leaders, like many around the world, it's not the suffering of the Syrian people that moves them, but cold, calculating self-interest. David McKenzie, CNN Beijing.